Welcome to RVN TV's New Perspectives. I'm your host, Barry Lefkowitz. We come to you each week with topics and issues that you'll generally find in the news. New Perspective, as you know, is designed to help give you, the viewing audience, both a perspective and hopefully we're able to educate and inform you on issues and topics that we present to you. Local government generally has the greatest impact on your daily lives, whether it's taxes, road repairs or construction, building of new commercial or residential projects. More often than not, generally the public usually feels as if it's in the dark or misinformed about these things. And as residents, we often get frustrated. They say knowledge and information is golden to have an informed citizenry. Is it possible for local governments to do a better job of providing critical information to you? To discuss that today and the solution using a special mobile platform to help government and citizens improve community engagement and the public at reach across infrastructure projects, commercial and residential and local events, is our colleague here, Amar Flora, who is the CEO and founder of Civy, which is a smart cities project that is finding great interest with government officials and local leaders. Amar, you have a phenomenal background in business as both the co-founder and director of the Curio Group, which did educational technology consulting. You were the COO of the Center for Projects and Innovation at the University of Sydney, which for our audience, we're talking about Australia. And you were the Director of Finances and Operations, also at the University of Sydney, because you're originally from Sydney. And you were a strategic analyst for Ameriprise Financial. What was the interest and desire for starting Civy, and then why worry and be concerned about government and these projects and things?
Well, first of all, Barry, thank you for having me on the show and giving me this opportunity to talk about Civy. I formed Civy after 5 years working we were servicing governments and cities in executive education, and often the topic of governance was discussed, and that involved communicating with stakeholders. That could be your developers, bankers, financiers, but most people would almost provide lip service to the community, the end users of that big project. So that got me thinking, how do you currently engage with your communities? The responses I got were, we do town halls, news, media, sort of bulletins, email surveys, but there wasn't a holistic and a single effort to reach a wider audience. For example, there could be a city of 1 million. I found out that on average, about 5 to 6% are reached. And the reason is most of them don't even know a project's about to be undertaken. Then suddenly the project is approved based on that small population sample. The project is about to be built. Now that it's physical, people can see it. Suddenly they're all up in arms because they say, hey, no one consulted us. The negative media backlash starts, and that makes the jobs of the cities and governments even more horrendous. They're already, daily putting out multiple fires. So I decided I'll launch Civy as a mobile platform. Simply, people are a lot more mobile aware, they're mobile savvy, they like the convenience, it's easy to use, and above all, it's free. So I decided to create Civy where a government can create an account and add a project and then share that project with its people and ask them questions, get the responses. So it's a database, it's a data creator, and it's a data aggregator. What I mean by the latter part, Civy links into your local communities, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So now
Right.
they've suddenly reached a much wider audience. So even if people do not have a Civy account, they will have a Facebook or a LinkedIn or a Twitter account. They can see the project and they can reply back to it, which will be captured in Civy. Going a bit further, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, the name Civy is very unusual. What is the basis for the name Civy?
It's just short for civic engagement. So
Okay.
it's something I was thinking I don't want to make it too cumbersome, something easy that people can just say, oh, let's Civy it. That's what I was thinking. And just to go a bit further, currently governments have the means and tools, but it's quite inefficient where they have people sitting in their back office, scraping LinkedIn and other forms of social media to look and collect data that their communities are talking about. And often their communities are just talking about general social stuff. They don't really talk about infrastructure on it or water management or all the other categories that the governments have to use to service the people. So Civy is more dedicated to those categories that governments and cities want.
So the concept here is using, basically you're talking about a cell phone,
Yes.
and using that as a mechanism for a government. And I assume it could be any kind of government,
Yes.
to be able to communicate with the audience. Normally, we often hear that when they have a town hall meeting, it's usually the rebel rousers that come to that meeting. What in talking with government officials and so forth, what are you finding as to their feelings about their town hall meetings and their ability to reach more people?
Well, very good point, Barry. One is there always will be people who will have the loudest voice, and they often turn up to the town hall meeting. That's one of the pain points for the mayors. They want to do the right thing by everyone, and although it's impossible, but at least they can get a broader audience and reach out to a broader audience of people. So my target is also to include that silent majority who have a big impact on what happens around the city, not just the people with the loudest voice. And the way I've done that is within Civy, the government will ask questions, people will give responses. Those responses will remain anonymous, and they will only be available for the government, so they can be more proactive in then reaching back out to people, get clarifications, or hold the next town hall and say, this is what you have asked for, this is the feedback, this is the project we should be doing, and this is how we will do it, this is how it will be built. What that does is it significantly makes the process more efficient, because now the government is proactive and it's ahead of any negative media publicity and rumors that may create because lack of information in the first place. So that's where the pain points I'm resolving for the governments in the cities.
Now, you made a key statement. You said about confidential. Could you, first of all, what has been the reaction of local government officials to the fact that the information is confidential? Because you mentioned about Facebook, you mentioned about Twitter, basic social media, which I think a lot of people get concerned because the commentary on there is unfiltered and it garners responses. So how does Civy deal with that?
The government, the mayors and the assemblymen I've spoken to have been extremely positive about that single feature. Frankly, they've loved it. To the fact that I've gotten a couple of verbal agreements to have the platform, they can start the trial of the platform for their cities. Uh, uh, I cannot talk on behalf of Facebook, on Twitter, but those platforms are phenomenal. They're great at the job that they do, but my target is to help governments and cities to reach out to people more. So that's where I'm aiming and my focus would be. At the same time, that's the front end of the government. The back office is I can help them by helping them become more efficient, because now they're looking at Civy as a single source of truth, as a single data platform that they will need for all their major categories where they have to talk to people.
I guess a couple, key questions, because, someone like myself is technologically challenged, but, I have my cell phone. How easy is it for someone to be able to voice their opinion based on the focus of what the government and the cities are trying to do as far as, controlling the narrative, and why is that important?
It's a very good question. On the technology side, my philosophy is back to basics. So I kept it simple. I haven't installed any artificial intelligence or machine learning, and there's a reason for that. Basically, I want to ask people their feedback, not have a machine or an AI predict what they're about to say. So keeping that in mind, I designed Civy as a simplistic platform which can be used by anyone who is registered on the platform as long as they're compliant with the local laws. And it's literally like sending a text message. So you see your government's put up a project, it'll give you a notification on the app. You can click on it and write down your response to the questions they're asking, and then close it. That's pretty much how straightforward it is.
Now, why is it important for government to be able to, because as soon as you say the word control, people, usually get concerned, but why is it important in terms of something like this, of, as you would say, control the narrative?
Well, when I've spoken to lots of mayors, assemblymen, congressmen, they all inherently want to do the right thing. But in doing the right thing, sometimes they don't get enough information from the people to help them do the right thing. So in this case, it's more about them staying ahead, proposing the right projects, or the projects they need for that community, asking the questions, and getting people's responses, but also at the same time valuing the confidentiality of those responses. So they're closed responses. Your response, for example, I won't be able to see, or my response you won't be able to see.
Okay.
Only the government official will. So now that allows the mayors to look at those responses and be a bit more proactive in reaching out to someone who's perhaps they need more clarification, or at the same time control the narrative and stop the, like I said earlier, the negative media backlash, the rumors, or people who necessarily don't understand and the project, but they end up creating more false information behind it. So that's the reason it's a very valuable source for mayors and city officials. On the other side, I also respect, and I saw there were a lot of people out there who do not want their responses to be public. So this tool, because it is closed,
Right.
They will feel more comfortable. They'll feel more comfortable that it is public, it is not public, and it's only being visible to their local elected official. And sometimes that's the straightforward interaction that they want. It's like in the old-fashioned days, pick up the phone and talk to your local councilman.
So it's a form of a direct communication.
Yes.
One of the things that we were talking about recently is millennials are, without question, millennials are a culture in of themselves. And you generally, for example, at the kind of town hall meetings and so forth, based on what you were finding and talking to government officials, won't show up to that. How do you think Civy helps change that equation in terms of getting the involvement?
Yeah, well, it is a tech platform, so it's more convenient, but it'll also allow the governments and cities to engage them more because it is a mobile platform. I mean, we have to look at millennials as the future leaders. Some of them will go on to become the next mayor, the next city officials, and the next public works, officials. So some of them, and not all of them, some of them, when they see Civy, when they start using it, they'll start inherently taking an interest in their local communities and cities and governments, and that interest could translate into the next big step for them. But that will only happen if they're engaged in the first place, and that's where I see Civy improving that engagement across the spectrum. Millennials may be faster in giving feedback. Meanwhile, the wiser, I guess, more experienced people will be more considered in giving feedback. That's the only key difference, the fastness of the response that the cities get. But at least now they're all on the same base with the same information, knowing that millennials may not pick up the newspaper and look at a city advert for the next big project. But if there's an app on their phone and they click on it, they see, oh, there's a new library being built, 2 blocks from my house. That'll be cool. I'd be interested in that. I can go check it out what a library is, for example, or a new mall, a new tennis court. That's when they will engage with it a bit more.
Now, just so we're clear, when the government wants to notify you, and it doesn't have to be just an infrastructure project, but I mean, it could be a road closure.
Yes.
I mean, there could be a whole variety of things. How will the public, the residents of that area, be notified?
So within the app, there are categories. Infrastructure is one category. The government can create a new category, let's say events or a local festival, a road closure, even a repairs and maintenance, like taking a picture of a pothole and sending it back up. So they can create categories, and along those categories, name the event, put some pictures up, and notify through the app the people. It's not necessary that the people may be already using the app. Some way, some won't. That's a given, but that's where the cross-functional sharing feature comes in play. So within Civy, they can then broadcast it onto other social media platforms that are linked to Civy, and that's Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So most of the 3 most common, that covers a wide range of demographics. So you've got your Facebook will cover off pretty much all sectors of the society. You've got LinkedIn that covers off the business and the corporate, the professionals. Then you've got the Twitter, which is individual influencers and deal makers and rainmakers and governments and think tanks on top.
Now, for example, I know that with my cell phone, when somebody's texting me, it pings. So I know I should be taking a look. Will Civy operate the same way, that when the government wants you to be able to be aware of, let's say, a road closure that's going to be taking place, how will they let the public know that they should be aware of that?
It'll ping. It's a notification option similar to any other app, and you can turn off the sound, or turn off the badge that appears, but you'll get a ping.
All right, so in other words, it's active in terms of letting you know there's something you should be reading.
That's right.
Okay, I think that's important. Now, you mentioned earlier about back office. Most residents probably are not aware that from a budgetary standpoint, most communities, in New Jersey, for example, you have 564. And most communities, they have staff, but they don't have a lot of staff. Because if the public's not aware, when you get your tax bill, if you look at it, only about 20% goes to local government. Over 60 to 70% goes for local school districts, and then you have your county taxes, which means that most communities are hard pressed to be able to provide all of the myriad of services that the public is expecting. So what is this back office and how will this help both economically and efficiently for a municipality?
So I've been fortunate enough for many cities that I've spoken to have given me a tour of their back office operations when it comes towards relating to marketing and public outreach. I understood the process on how currently they have their staff who have their day jobs, but sometimes these people cannot do their jobs effectively because they're finding themselves answering calls from people because people don't know where to go. So that's one area. The second one is they employ people who are technically brilliant people. They're engineers, but they're now finding themselves scraping social media, all forms of social media, pull the data out, analyze the data, look for information which is relevant to the government services. So that's a category of infrastructure as an example.
Correct.
And the rest is all social data that they don't need. And that's a very time-consuming exercise. So with Civy, because the platform is designed for government to use based on their services and add categories based on their services, they are inherently freeing up those smart people to provide more meaningful work, to do community outreach or whatever they're needed for in the area. And that's what I simply mean by back office efficiencies.
All right, so Civy then will take this information coming in, and then what will it do with it?
So the information that comes in, first, I guess information coming in is only as good as the starting information that's going out.
Correct.
So once the mayor or the city official has put the project onto Civy and put the relevant questions they want to ask, all that information that will be coming in, again, the responses to those questions will be available as a downloadable report. And that report can be in various formats that the city wants. It could be an Excel, CSV, PDF. Using that report, they can then look at, they can apply the appropriate filters. Let's say it's an Excel report. They'll apply the appropriate filters to say, okay, these are all the responses we got, and look at what's the most common response and what's the least common response. And basically on that principle, it'll give them the comfort level now, at least they've reached 65% of people as opposed to 10% previously, or even my aim is 100% target, right? But it'll give them the comfort that they've reached such a broader audience and there are people who are against the project or for the project and they've given their reasons why, and it allows them to make a faster informed decision.
Great. We've come to that time in the show where we have to bid you adieu, but Amar, if you'll look into that camera right there and tell people how they can contact you.
Please, you can contact me directly on my email, amar@civy.co. So that's AMAR@civy, CIVY.co. Thank you so much.
I thank you for sharing with us about how governments are now looking for better ways of reaching the public to get their feedback. And as always, I thank you for allowing us to come into your home each and every week. Look forward to seeing you next week. You take care. And Amar, thank you.
Thank you so much, Barry, for having me again.